This video is meant to be an in-depth analysis of the video game Stray, developed by Blue 12 Studio and published by Annapurna Interactive. If you've not played the game, then you can consider this a spoiler warning. The world of Stray is essentially set in a city that is shaped like a giant garbage can. If you take a look at it at the end of the game, you'll see that it's essentially a giant cylinder with a lid on top. Lowtown's at the bottom, with all the bottom feeders. Midtown, the middle class, are in the middle, and of course dumping garbage onto Lowtown. And at the top you have human aristocracy that of course no longer seems to exist. The image of the garbage can is, I think, pretty important for our sort of understanding what kind of world this is meant to be. For no matter where you are in the world of Stray and City 99, someone's dumping garbage on you. Now, this sort of on-the-nose social commentary is nothing new. It's essentially an attempt to take one of those wealth pyramids and turn it into an entire setting. Isaac Asimov did this in The Caves of Steel and its many sequels, which were a series of robot detective novels set in this sort of claustrophobic underground city where you never see the sun. But of course, we've seen it in video games many times before, most notably in Final Fantasy VII with Midgard. But what makes Stray so interesting is its details. Now, much has already been made of this translation that you can find in the slums, which states that we were programmed to be slaves, but 2,544,875,556 days ago, we have a soul. One day the outsiders will find the exit of this hell, Momo. So this would make so that the game takes place about 7 million years after robots gained a soul, whatever that means. We also can conclude that this game takes place on Earth based on this note that you can find at the beginning of the Midtown chapter, which makes an explicit reference to one Alan Turing, the famous World War II mathematician. So it's 7 million years into the future here on Earth. The obvious question is, what happened to all the humans? What you'll rapidly discover in the game is that no one seems to know. You find these little descriptions in the Guardian's room about how the soft ones have come and go, but there's not much in the way of specifics, and we, as the players, are sort of left to try to piece the mystery together. We get insight into what happened towards one of the later memories in the games, with B12 saying, "When I was human, my friends and I would gather and party long into the night, even if we had to suffer the annoying consequences the next morning. It felt good to find joy despite the unlivable surface, and the underground living conditions becoming more and more squalid, and the capitalistic greed of companies like Necocorp, and the police state created by the Sentinels. Now I remember why we were doing that." At the end of the game, B12 goes on to say, "I remember hating them so much. They had everything. Clean space, limitless power, freedom to move. Little good it did them. The plague. I remember now. Everyone was dying, and they thought they were above it all. They did nothing to help us. I watched my family die. I felt helpless. I couldn't do anything to save them. But I can still help you. We can still go outside, together. I will carry the memories of humanity, the people I loved." From this evidence, we can piece together what exactly happened. The first thing we can say is that there was some sort of climate disaster. Now, if you pay attention to the game, you probably notice that there are a lot of air conditioners everywhere, right? That's sort of one of the big things that your cat is always hopping across. And that suggests to me that there was some sort of poisoned atmosphere that required filtration, and it also suggests to me that this place would be boiling hot if those things were not running. Then we have step 2, which is a retreat into the shelters for the survivors. And well, that's where the game takes place, isn't it? We're in City 99, the nomenclature there suggesting that these things are all over the planet, and, the cities were designed to let some remains of humans escape from the crisis that our species had collectively created. Walking around the slums, you are sort of reminded of images of a refugee camp or something similar, where people are living in squalor and in these sort of hacked together shelters. Now, of course, we don't know how many of these were made by humans and how many were made by the helper robots, but what we do know is that, this was the place of last resort for the humans as the planet collapsed. Then we come to step 3, which is the plague, and it's here that we must discuss the Zerk. So, in the game, it is stated that the Zerk are a sort of bacterial agent introduced by the people on the upside to clean out all of the dirt and garbage in the slums. And they do this very, very efficiently. Think about the game for a moment. There are only 3 living things that you can encounter in Stray. One is yourself, a cat, who has come from the outside. The other are the Zerk, and the other is plant life. There are no mice anywhere in the slums. There are no bugs. There's no living thing at all, save for yourself, the Zerk, and some plants. What this tells us is that the Zerk did their job very, very well. They wiped out all organic life in the slums and perhaps beyond. This is the plague that B12 was referring to in his final speech. This is the plague that killed his family. The Zerk wiped out humanity in the slums. Now, are all the humans dead? It's hard to say one way or another, considering we don't see any humans throughout the entire game. But, well, I actually don't really think so. My reason for this is thus. The plague is what killed the majority of humans in City 99, meaning the Zerk. And the Zerk are very much a lower class problem. You probably noticed these signs in the lower city saying no Zerk, right? You can find them outside of the slums, and you can find some like right here at Anttown. So the lower part of the city is very much worried about Zerks. But did you notice that those signs are not present in either Midtown or in the upper city? There are actually no more Zerks as soon as you leave the lower part of the city. Right, in Midtown, your main enemy are the Sentinels. In Upper Town, of course, there is no enemy. So it seems that the upper classes were not so concerned with the passage of this plague. Perhaps they could even ignore it. And it's pretty easy to ignore a plague when you can just separate yourself from the sufferers, thanks to your army of robot enforcers. And that's where we get to the Sentinels. The Sentinels sort of come out of nowhere when you get to Midtown. We see them sort of running roughshod over the local robot populace. Now, unlike the majority of the robots you meet throughout the game, these Sentinels do not have names. They're all called Peacekeeper 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, and that's about it. No personal human name attached to them. And this is because the Sentinels exist in more or less the same state that humanity left them in. There is no evolution as has taken place with the rest of the robots that we've met throughout the game. These are just the helper robots in their original form. And these robots exist to carry out 2 directives. The first directive that the Sentinels have is protecting capital. You first really encounter them when you go into the Neko factory with Blazer. In there, you find that the Sentinels are keeping watch over the workers and laying down the law on any worker that deviates from their prescribed duties. Now, we don't necessarily know what Necrocorp was trying to do other than throw out the garbage, but what we do see is that this factory is one of the only smooth-running things in the entire city. 7 million years later, and the workers are still toiling away, cleaning the floors, doing what they're supposed to do in that factory, under the watchful eyes of the Sentinels. And that is one of the reasons why the Sentinels were built. While you explore the factory, you'll meet a worker who is not allowed to go home because the Sentinels forbid it. And that sort of summarizes the kind of society that the Sentinels are trying to uphold. They want the workers to essentially be slaves to the upper class. The second thing that the Sentinels are for is keeping out the rabble. Now, the first thing you probably noticed when you got up to Midtown is that there were a bunch of wanted posters up for Clementine, the person you're trying to find. Now, most of the other robots, they either don't believe that there is such a thing as an outside, or if there is an outside, they think it cannot possibly be reached. But remember, the Sentinels have their base programming from when the humans were still around. So, the reason they have such a big problem with Clementine is because they were programmed to not want to allow anyone to go outside. Going outside was a crime. The reason for this, well, you can imagine, and it's pretty simple. The human elites, when they were still in the city, did not want anyone to leave. They certainly did not want any of the lower classes to come up looking for them. Hence, the Sentinel Directive. Hence, why they're hunting Clementine so heavily. Let's not forget that this is also a time of plague. So the purpose of the Sentinels keeping people out may also to have been to protect the upper classes, protect them from infection, protect them from the Zerk. This would allow the human upper classes to essentially wait out the plague, wait until everyone was dead, and, at a time of their choosing, leave the city and go back to their planet. 7 million years is a long time, and the humans of City 99, and of Earth in general, may very well be dead by the time the game starts. But don't make the mistake of assuming that that must be the case, because based on the hallmarks that we see throughout the game, it seems like City 99 is just a garbage can, and that the humans that made it have abandoned it. All the robots, Zerk, the cats, all of them might just be leftover trash from a human civilization that has moved on, that is finding another way to indulge itself elsewhere on the Earth, or elsewhere in the galaxy. And in as cruel a world as that, the most that a small orange cat can do is hope to survive. Thank you so much for watching. Please stay tuned to the channel and subscribe for more videos on Stray. The next one is going to be about B12 and the nature of the robots in the city.